السلام عليكم. لا تنسوا الإعجاب بالفيديو والاشتراك في القناة تشجيعا لنا لنستمر بنشر المزيد إن شاء الله.
الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. So, Paul, just so that we start, everyone knows what we're talking about. So we just met just a few seconds ago. We wanted to ask some questions on issues that I don't fully know yet, but maybe around religion, of course, maybe around God and so on. So, just tell us a bit about your, what you believe first of all, and then perhaps, see whether your question then resonates from that angle.
I don't really have a firm belief system. I'm just open-minded about everything, absolutely everything. If somebody come up to me, I mean, where I live, there's not many people come up to me preaching about God or anything like that. It's not that kind of place. Even talking about it, you probably get laughed at. But I've always been interested in it, and I'm on YouTube, and I'm on, so since the technology is advanced, you can learn more. You don't have to have a Bible. You can read it, or your Quran, and you can just go online and it's there. But what fascinates me is how far people are willing to take the religion. So, as far as I'm aware, Muslims pray 5 times a day. They've got certain dietary laws. They can't drink alcohol. They can't do this. Now, for me, even just the thought of doing that is just, I would fall at the first hurdle.
Do you think because the practicality of
when you're born
following it, or the whole idea of following a particular religion?
I think just what's involved, the rules, the regulations, things like that. I mean, I try and, there's certain, I'll go through stages in my life where I'm like, right, I need to sort myself out, right? But I never get there. But to add praying 5 times a day and to not do this, I would find it incredibly hard. But when I approach you to ask questions, it's because obviously I've seen your YouTube channels and stuff, and I find it really interesting. But I think the main question is, you had Judaism, right? And as far as I'm aware, the Muslims think it's partly corrupted. I don't know the full thing. And then you had Christianity, and then you've got Islam. And each message is different, But why wouldn't, if it's the truth, why wouldn't God just turn around and just say, right, that hasn't worked, this is the final message? Why would he not just reveal himself to the whole world publicly? Like the Jews say that they had a public revelation from God which is unique to their religion, because normally it's give the message to the messenger, he spreads it. But the Jews say, no, he revealed himself to the whole nation. Why wouldn't he just reveal himself to the whole world if he wants us to follow him? Why do we have to kind of rely on a book that was in the Middle East, relying on people to interpret it? If he wanted us to follow him, why wouldn't he just say, right, there we go,
So let's try to explore this a bit more. When you say God could have...
People that apply that. Now, if he is all-powerful, there would be some way that he could communicate to the whole world. How he would do it, I mean, I don't know. But surely, if he wanted to convey a message, it would be given to the whole world. Why was it only given to a small group of people?
What if it wasn't like that? So if I tell you, in fact, this is what I asked you, if God wants to give to the whole world this message, how do you think this can be given? There are a few options. Either every individual, like you and I, we have direct revelation from God, or a particular group or nation, they have a representative who have this message, who then passes on that message to the people.
Say that again.
You would prefer, which is making sense to you, that the revelation from God, the message from God, the guidance from God should be given to all people, not just a group of people in the Middle East. Yeah. Because, what about the people in England, for example, or in Indonesia, in China, in Malaysia, far away? We're talking about from here, England. So either God gives guidance to nation states or tribes or communities, or he gives guidance individually directly. What do you think?
Well, you said individual states. Why not just everybody?
Yeah, everybody individually or collectively.
Just the whole world. Just why not just reveal everything to the whole world apart from, because I'm pretty sure that when Muhammad was on his own in a cave, that he was on his own. Why just reveal it to one person on his own? Why not just reveal everything to everybody?
Okay, let's address this question about everybody. You see, if God is to now appear and a voice appear in the sky, for example, and says, I am God and this is what I want you to do, and everyone hears it and so on and so forth, right? There won't be any element of faith in God. People will be coerced. They will be compelled to believe in God and do exactly what God wants them to do. There will not be any chance or opportunity for freedom of choice of your own thinking at all whatsoever. Yeah, because once somebody puts a gun on your head, for example, and says, you can shoot, and says, look, if you move, I'm going to shoot, and then you say, like, yeah, it's up to you if you want to move or not. Really, you're compelled already in that sense. So if this was the way, then people would have no choice whatsoever and the matter would have been decided. That's it. There is no ifs and buts anymore. Everyone has no choice, and that's it. You have to follow God's laws. But God has created us in this is Islamic paradigm, Islamic concept. He's created us in this world with some amount of freedom of will, free will, freedom of choice, where we can exercise our freedom of choice and verify, seek, find out and verify the message and the guidance God sends and follow that or not to follow that. That's when I'm going to make my choice. That's when I'm going to say, okay, fine, I'm not going to be that arrogant and stubborn. I would rather follow knowing that now this is the message from God. I will follow this message so that I know I will save myself from the punishment in hellfire and earn the mercy of God. Or, God will be pleased with me, merciful with me, and shower His grace for me to enter the paradise that He's created, right? This is the Islamic concept. So in this way, we don't believe God just inspires people and leaves it to them to make their own life and thinking, okay, this is the revelation I have from God. Imagine I came to you now saying, what, God, Tunka Wunka, has come to me and tell you that you have to give me all your money, all your wealth, your house, your family to me, and you serve me, and I'm your master. I am the representative of God on earth. God told me directly. What would you say about this one? You'd say, come on, are you sure? How am I supposed to know? You're just like an opportunist, right? You're trying to rob me off. So people can, if individually this guidance was left to people to make their own decisions about how to live their life, how to worship God, how to connect to God, how to behave in this world, people will come up with all these different ideas and opportunistic things like this to exploit people, like many people have done. So God in His mercy, He approached in a different way. He sends, in fact, He raises human beings from us, the best from us that He chooses from our communities, and appoints them to be prophets and messengers, so that people can then get the message from them, because they will know that these people that now who's been appointed as a prophet and a messenger of God, they have seen them, known them, that these people are the most upright.
Yeah, but you see, that's a good idea, but it didn't work, did it? According to Islam, it didn't work.
No, it did.
Because didn't the Old Testament get corrupted?
No, it did. Let me explain. So, in this way, God raises human beings to be prophets and messengers, the best among them, because He's the one who taught them to be upright, taught them to be, almost perfect in the sense we're talking about perfection of character. So there would not be one who would be cheating, lying, deceiving. There would be one who would say, have had I been like them, okay, that's how they would want to be emulated or imitated in terms of their roles and their character. So God, in the past, He hasn't left any nation, or you know, when we're talking about tribe or communities, without sending or raising a prophet or a warner to them, telling them that yes, you're a creation, I have created you for this reason, and this is what you're supposed to do. So as Muslims, this is one thing to clear. God doesn't punish people unless He sends a warner telling them this is what you should be doing and this is what you should be avoiding. Because punishment is when you do things that goes against God's will, right? God tells you do not lie, and you lie, and then you may be liable for punishment. So
does that mean that anybody who doesn't read the Quran and doesn't read the...
We'll come back to this point, because this is we're talking about... No, we'll come to this point, because we're talking about a point where God has sent His final messenger with the final message. So this is slightly different from the time past. In the earlier times, when people had their own prophets and messengers in their own communities, right? The people elsewhere in a different community, thousands of miles apart, they weren't supposed to follow this because maybe they haven't heard anything about them, because the distance between them is so great that you can't even travel to go there, let alone having the means of transportation at that time, you know, sailing across the sea and so on, right? So each community had their own owners, and they were responsible in their belief and in their actions according to what the prophet and the messenger has brought to them. If people disobeyed that prophet and the messenger, then they become, you know, a rebel against God. They will be the one to deserve punishment from God. If they followed those prophets and messengers, then they're the ones who will be successful. Now we say, as Muslims, all of those prophets, 124,000 or more, that number, just think about this number, such a huge number of the prophets that came, you know, in multiple nations, in multiple times. Some nations had more than one prophet or a messenger. When they came with this same message. That same message is, worship none but God. Avoid and shun and abandon and reject the worship of false gods. Worship one and only God, who deserves our worship. And of course follow the prophet and messenger.
So I've heard it said before, you know, especially on Speaker's Corner, when I've seen it on YouTube, about people, mainly Muslims, arguing with Christians about one God, because the Trinity is a bit of a... Well, I'm getting into the Trinity. I'm not that advanced, but I understand the argument that, you know. But why would that be so important to God about the? Because to me, it seems a little bit like jealousy from God. You know, if somebody's worshipping something else, why would He get so angry to put somebody in hell just because he's maybe the person's got the wrong idea. Maybe the person's just, you know, in his own thought process is thinking, no, this is really what I should be worshipping. Yeah, God's going to say, no, you worship me, otherwise, you know, down to the barbecue. It just doesn't sound very nice, you know.
Okay. So when we're talking about why does God punish people if they have the wrong concept of God, if some people had a concept of God where God is a trinity, or God is a monkey or an elephant or a rat, or the thunder and the skies and the planets, why does God even care? What we say is God created us for a purpose, to be grateful to Him. This is the essence of worshipping God. Instead, people are being grateful to something else. They're grateful to Mother Nature. They're being grateful to some other, you know, beings or persons or entities other than God. When people started associating partner with God, this is in Islam called associating a partner with God. So it's the concept known as shirk. Perhaps you've heard of this term. Associating something with God in His worship. So instead of worshipping God alone, they worship something else along with God. Now, I want you to think about something as an analogy. See, God is the one who is going to reward you if you do what you're supposed to do, right? But if you do not do the actions that God asks you to do, why are we going to even expect the reward? Just for the sake of an example, right? Do you work? Yeah. So let's say, I'm not going to go any further details in your personal work. Let's say you work for a company, okay? And the company pays you at the end of the month, right? Gives you a good wages or a good salary. And you have certain rules and principles and policies that you have to follow as you are an employee of this organization. You have to turn to work on time. You can't just, not turn up and just say, I don't care, I'll just come whatever time, or just sit there and do no work, right? You can't do this. You're expected to do the work. When you will have this kind of appraisals, whether you are actually up to the standards of your work or not, we call it PDR, professional, development review, where have you been doing what you're supposed to have been doing in the first place? Are you up to the standards of your work? Did you meet the standards? If you start bullying other people, other employees, and rob, cheat and destroy the company's properties, you will fall under a lot of rules and regulations from the company where, against harassment, against bullying, against a lot of things like, company's properties that you're damaging and so on. There are clear-cut rules. So the company expects you to work for that company so that at the end of the day, if you do that, you'll get your wages that they have contracted you to have at the end of the day. Now suppose you don't do any of that, you don't do any work, instead you work for the company's rival. You do exactly what they tell to do, you tell all the secrets, whatever, and you work for the company. Do you really think your company that you work for, the organization, should really, give you the salaries and wages at the end of the month and say, there you go, you've done a great, excellent work? You wouldn't. No. Do you agree that? You wouldn't.
I see what you're saying.
But I'm just giving one example. No. And I will continue to make my point.
Yeah. I totally understand where you're coming from. But what I would say is, when you go to a job, you sign a contract, and you're expected to do a certain amount of work, right? And if you don't do it, and you know what's in for you, as humans, because you're relating it to the rewards with God, I'm assuming. None of us asked to be here. None of us asked to be here, did we? So we're just here, and it seems like it seems to me like we're just up at. We've got a battle from day one that we've got to do this, got to do that. Otherwise, it's.
But it's your choice, though. You see, when we are not asked, we haven't asked to be here. The fact that we have been created itself, we need to understand that someone gave us life, or we already are in debt. You see, someone gave us life, gave us the means to enjoy this life. I mean, you enjoy smoking, for example, earlier on you were saying. Someone gave you this privileges to have enjoyment, friendship, nice food, how you, interact with people and so on. There's a lot of things you enjoy, okay? Let's not go into all the details, but we know human beings, we can enjoy a lot of things. The one who gave us all of this, given us the life to enjoy it, we are already in debt to this God. So it's not about like, I didn't ask you to be here. We are already in debt.
But what about all the pain? I mean, I don't know, this is the question that you've probably heard a million times, like, why is all the pain in the world? And I've heard different arguments. I mean, I can't speak for what you're about to say, but I've heard the arguments, it's a bit like when I can't remember, there was a Muslim I heard on, and he said something about the pain that you have when you're a child, I think, and he said you don't remember the pain. Or it's a mother, no, that was it. It's when a mother gives birth, she's going through all the pain. But then when the pain's gone, you don't think about the pain. But there's situations where there's pain where you think, hang on, like with a child, where it's because I've heard about the ozone layer, pollution and all that kind of thing. But let's talk about a little girl walks along, trips up, splits her nose, ends up dying. That's unnecessary pain, and this little girl didn't ask to be born and to feel that pain. And so you could flip it both ways, I suppose, couldn't you?
Okay. So you see, pain, sometimes you have to understand that is a relative thing, right? It has its good and it has its other functions and purpose. We say we are taking a journey. In this journey we have to develop ourselves, we have to grow, and we have to, in a way, perfect ourselves as much as we can, so that then we can go to the next phase of our life. So pain has a function. To give you one example of a good thing about pain, this is why God also tests us with sufferings. Suppose you didn't have any nerve endings which responses to pain, and then you had at the back or something losing blood through one of your blood vessels. You probably not noticed anything, right? Maybe loss of sensation of even the feelings that's there, and then suddenly you drop dead. Pain tells us something's wrong in our body. Okay, so when you eat something bad, nasty food, right, junk food, you feel pain in the stomach. You might vomit. You might have diarrhea. Why? Because that thing is not good for you. So it's your body then reacts to it with pain and this reaction of getting rid of this food through your mouth or to the other end of your gastrointestinal tract, right? Sometimes when, like if you have a cut and so on and so forth, or a burn, like fire, if it didn't give us the pain, just imagine, I put my hand in the oven, I didn't even realize, whole thing is burnt off. But when I have pain sensors in my skin nerves, right, just underneath my skin, there are pain receptors, I will retract my hand like that. So this is a good thing. It's protecting me from unnecessary harm and suffering. So if you think about it, pain is not necessarily bad. It has its purpose and function, but the way you need to understand is contextualize it. So when a child, for example, dies, the parents may be tested. Are you still grateful to God who gave you life and your children life? Are you grateful to God for that? Or are you now saying, oh, God, why did you do this to me? This is the testing of their patience and so on. Children, when they die and go on, I mean, their destiny in the hereafter is different. Okay, so don't just feel that the children have suffered and so on, and say no. They will be in a very good position in the hereafter, and there are tests for them too later on in terms of how they will end up in the final destination. So when we think about, say, the cancers people get, earthquakes and malarias and whatnot, right? A lot of things. Ask yourself, many of the things are induced by us. We created holes in the ozone layer, very, cosmic rays which are very damaging to us. Now they can enter, passing this layer, because we have like a canopy of this world with our atmosphere, different atmospheres, where it will reflect back all these different bad cosmic rays and some, right? If we create a hole in this canopy, it will come through and then will give us a skin cancer and so on and so forth. We food junk and lots of chemicals in our food. We put them in there during manufacture of food. Even, for example, they want to make the eggshell so strong, they put some chemicals, manganese, whatever. I mean, if you think about it, we are poisoned in various ways in everything, what we eat. There is no such thing as, natural food anymore. These things have an effect on our body, carcinogens. Many of the things are carcinogens. We only realize much later after suffering and say, you know what, eating these kind of things, now you realize you're exposed to these chemicals which gives you cancer. We were responsible for this.
I would agree.
Certain things, yeah, very good. Certain things like regions of this earth where there is earthquakes and so on. God doesn't want us to live just because, in this area. The whole earth has been created by God. We have made artificial boundaries, in terms of the nation states, and we put restrictions of travel in between and going and so on. And that's why some people that could have easily moved from that place, which is very, prone to earthquakes and suffering, people die from there, and other places, there, thousands and thousands of acres were just empty. No one is living there because there are not people to settle there, right? We have created these artificial boundaries and stopping people from moving in there. So some things can be man-made, like in the Quran, God says, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر. Corruption has occurred in the lands and the sea for what man has done. And God says, so that we can taste some of the things that we've done. We have corrupted the sea. We have corrupted the sea in such a way that we have polluted the sea. We've killed, the natural life in the sea waters, or even the rivers, or on the canals, or on the streams. We have corrupted or polluted the air. These air pollutions by industrializations with all this, things that goes into the air by our industry. We have done all of this. So we have corrupted many things. So many things we are suffering and seeing the bad effects because what we have done. Okay. So when we talk about pain and suffering, we need to really contextualize and say, really, who are we to blame? Who are we blaming in the first place? Okay. So it is a very broad thing to understand and contextualizing it. Just want to return, if you don't mind, to the question about what we say, how God created or raised prophets and messengers from different nation states. All came with the same message of the oneness of God. In Arabic we call tawheed or monotheism, which is you worship none but God in His oneness without giving or ascribing any partners to this God. This has been the consistent message throughout. Every prophet from every nation, they brought this message to the people. Those who followed this message, they were called Muslims. Someone who submitted and surrendered their will. So they are a Muslim, and that message was called Islam, submission and surrender to God, of worshipping God alone. What happened is this: when people saw the message came to them, some of them believed, some of them didn't believe because they had their own free will, right? And these people, or some of those people, didn't want this message to propagate within the same community, some nations. And when they were powerful enough, they started corrupting their message that was given. Because when the messenger or the warner or the prophet has passed away, you have the believers now passing on this message. But these powerful elites within the communities, they have a mission and an agenda to corrupt this message because it goes against their own interest. Imagine the message says, do not give usury and interest to people, but give them in charity or help them without an interest. But these people, like our banks today, you borrow £1,000 and you have to give £1,500 back because they're robbing you by your weakness. They're exploiting your weakness. That's the greed they have. They want to make money, but rather than saying, okay, you know what, you're in need, let me give you this money that you need and pay me back the same. That's not it. So people are, because of their greed, power hungry, they will try exploiting, and they want to change the message and saying, no, what's wrong with lying? What's wrong with cheating? What's wrong with killing? What's wrong with murder? And so on. These people, throughout times, they started corrupting the message. Hello, how are you? These elites, they wanted to corrupt the message, and some of them have succeeded in the past. God, she's so cute. Some of them and succeeded in such a way that the message that was original is no longer to be seen as the same. It's become totally different because they've changed it themselves for their own wishes and needs.
Going on, let's say it was happening in Christianity, say, just for example. How long after Christianity was Islam? Was it 600 years or 400 years? How long after was it?
About 600.
600. Why did he wait so long? If all this corruption was going on, why did it take 600 years for him to say, right, no, what you're doing's wrong? What happened to them people in that 600 years?
Yeah, very good question. You see, the question about the interim periods between a messenger and another messenger, okay, if you think about it, this can be, short, it could be very long, it could be intermediate, depending on the wisdom of God. Depending on the wisdom of God, it could be various time intervals. When the message of Christianity was there, it doesn't mean that every single Christians meaning the message that they received from Christ, they were in the wrong path. There were still people who were following, and they were living their life according to the message of God. it doesn't mean wholesale whole religion is corrupted. I don't think, we can say that. That's why you will find the Quran says, "Laysu sawa." They are not all equal, the same. Among them are those who spend their night worshipping, praying to God. They're not all the same. We can't put them all in the same basket. Okay? But what has happened is the religion in its structure within the elites and so on, who's going to pass on, so on, the people who will become the forebearers, the keepers of this religion, and take it, this is what Christianity is. When they say this is the version of Christianity where God is a three and so on, or Trinity and so on, that's how the message gets corrupted. Okay? Within Arabia, there were still some Jewish people who were following the laws of God, and they were waiting for our prophet to come. They were waiting because within the scripture they knew God's going to send another prophet, and they were waiting in Arabia. Just like Paul, when he converted to Christianity, he didn't go to Jerusalem straight away. When he went, he went to Arabia. Why was he going to Arabia?
Because he couldn't convert the Jews.
What was in Arabia?
Gentiles?
No, not because of that. Because in Arabia is where the prophet is to be awaited for. That's what the Jewish people are awaiting. So, your question about 600 years, what's happening with these people? If people did not have the message in clarity and clearly, they would not be accounted for, and this is the constant message of God. God punishes those people once the message has come to them. So if they did not receive the pristine, clear message, they will be judged according to their intellectual understanding of reality, whether they actually use their intellect and come to believe that God is one and to be worshipped alone or not. In the Quran, there is a chapter which tells us that in the hereafter, when the people who deserve to go to hellfire and the angels are dragging them in chains, in shackles, they were asked by the gatekeepers of angels, to these people, didn't they come to you, prophets and messengers, warn us? You know what they will say? Yes. Well, certainly they did came. But we belied them, we rejected them, we denied them. But then they will confess. They would say, had we but listened to those prophets and messengers, or used our aql, used our intellect, we would not have ended up in this place. So there is a dual role. One is the role of obeying and following a prophet and a messenger, okay, as you have heard or seen the message from that prophet and messenger. At the same time, the role the intellect plays, that we have to use our mind, our reason, our intellect. If we didn't, then you could have believed in anything. You could believe this microphone is God, right? Some people, you'll be surprised. So this period, the people will be judged with justice. They would not, in fact, God tells us no one will be judged even to the very atom weight of injustice. God is that just. He's not even unjust, even to the atom weight of things, to his slaves, to his creations. So when we say that people in the past, like say in Judaism, what happened? When the messengers and prophets came, they killed those prophets and messengers. Whether it's Zechariah and a few others, God in his mercy sends up another prophet, reminding them, look, I remind you again, because this is his mercy. And some listens, some don't. So throughout different nations and history, prophets were sent and the message was there like this. Those people who followed, they're the successful ones. And those who corrupted it, they will have their justice meted out to them. And those who, wrongly changed the message of God, they will be in a very bad consequence in the hereafter. So if you think about it, the message of Islam is universal. It is something that can be reached even by the intellect alone. If you didn't hear anything about Islam and you were there, say 5,000 years ago, in a remote island, you can still come to the conclusion, using your untampered, uncorrupted intellect, that there is a creator of this cosmos, of this reality, and there is a reason of your creation. that you should be, thanking and worshipping and being grateful to this Creator alone, without any, and you should maintain a good way of life, because God has also instilled within you, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. He has inspired within you the good and the bad. You see, God has already inspired within us the bad, the evil and the good. It's not that we left us without that. We don't know what bad is. Every single human being should know that killing is bad, murder is bad.
I suppose what you say, you've just struck a point there where you said every human being should know. I think that's one of the questions, right? Say somebody is not religious, doesn't follow Christianity, Judaism, Islam, whatever. Who deserves the better reward? Somebody who doesn't kill somebody because he feels it in himself. He hasn't read the Quran, but he feels it in himself that he shouldn't kill. Or the person who reads the Quran where it says you shouldn't kill. To me, the person who feels it, he deserves just as much of a reward because he feels it himself. Now I know you can go back to, people think that things are right and things are wrong, and you can argue, well, who says you're right and wrong? But we all know, like you say, you should know that it's wrong. So I think the person that feels it, he may not be religious, but he should get a reward just the same. But I would love to talk to you all day, but I've got to go because I'm going to meet my missus because she's been shopping. But I've just got one more question for you, if you don't mind. Do you believe that Jesus is the Messiah prophesied in the Jewish Bible?
So we believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah the Jewish people were expecting. Jewish people were expecting the Messiah to come to save them from the political oppression and suffering that they were already suffering under for a long time. So Christ will come. Christ means the Messiah. He will come and he will deliver the people from this. And he will also come to tell them about a good news, a prophet to come after him that they should follow, and that prophet is Ahmad, or Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who will be the final messenger. So indeed, this is part of our articles of faith, that we believe in the prophets of God, and he is a prophet of God who is the Messiah to the Jewish people.
See, the reason I ask is because with us being interested in religion, there was a Jewish rabbi from the 90s. He's dead now, and I've watched a few of his lectures, and he hated Christian missionaries, hated it. He said because he actually said he'd rather have the Holocaust than Christian missionaries trying to steal the Jewish soul, because to go against your own faith is the worst thing you can do. But one of the things he said, look, it's as simple as this. He said, Jesus can't be the Messiah. He said, because he wasn't a descendant of King David. He was a descendant through his mother's side, through Mary, but in Jewish tradition, it's got to be through paternal line only. So the mother defines the religion, but tribal affiliation is through father to son. Well, he didn't have a father, did he? So how could he be the Jewish Messiah if in Jewish tradition he's got to be a descendant of David through paternal line?
Yeah. So the Christians, not Christians, the Jewish people who are still Jew and has not accepted Christ, they have their reasons why they do not accept Christ as the Messiah. Okay. As Muslims, we have our own criteria in terms of what constitutes a prophet and a messenger of God, how they're appointed and so on, and how the Jewish people are misled in thinking that he's not, and how the Christian community are misled in thinking that he's more than a Messiah, he's God or Son of God. I mean, but because of the shortage of time, this is a discussion we can have another time. But I want to just leave you with this this message that you are a very nice, open individual who's thinking about all of these things. It's not that you don't care, you do care. Paul, when you say you certainly do care. In your heart, you have a very good heart. I can clearly see that, and you are seeking and longing for the truth, and you will have it. God guides those who seek the truth. This is what God tells us. What you need to do is to come to the correct understanding of how we can come to this truth of God, and what sort of tools are we going to use. So, clean heart, clean mind. Pure heart and a pure mind means leave all preconceived biases and prejudices. Oh, how can I believe in a prophet who's from Arabia and I'm English, for example, or I'm Northish? We have to leave all that, because God appoints a prophet who He chooses to be the best for the people. He can choose someone from England or choose someone from anywhere in the world, or even from Arabia, like He has done. So we have no choice in terms of like how has God chosen it. God has His wisdom in choosing the prophet and messenger. We have to analyze and verify it. So when you look at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life and his teachings and his character, you analyze and say, does this fit the characteristics of a prophet of God? Does his teaching resonate with the message of God that God would send about worshipping Him alone, about heaven and about hell, about being good here, be good to your neighbor, good to your mother, good to your father, good to your children, and so on? Does it resonate, the message? Look at what He has brought, the Quran. Does the Quran itself provide evidence for itself as from God? Is it something that people can just say, oh, I can bring something like it? Or does the Quran say, no, this is a book with its own evidence, it's from God, with His own messages? So when you analyze and start scrutinizing and verifying it, you will have no other choice but to say, I am satisfied. I am content that this is Islam, the true religion from God. In fact, this is what I'm seeking for. This is the messenger that I'm seeking and I'm looking for. And this is the Quran, the guidance that I'm seeking for. And this is what, when you do that, the belief will enter in your hearts already. What you will then do is make that belief and you declare it with your mouth that yes, I am declaring that I am a Muslim, submitter to God alone, worshipping God alone without any partners and following Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the last messenger. And then you will manifest that into actions. That say, I know what is good for me because God tells me what to do. God tells me avoid those foods and have these foods. Dietary laws, remember mentioned, because it's good for us. Blood, dead meat, so on, and things that God says, these because they are bad for us. God is sparing us to experiment everything, and then we die in this era and have all these diseases and so on. He's given us, okay, this is good for you, this is bad for you. So He's given us these laws and regulations, whether it's be dietary, social laws, economics laws, political laws and regulations and so on, because He's freeing us, sparing us from this misery of trial and error like the communists did in a few decades ago. And by that process they killed thousands and millions of people, and still they failed because how many people are being communist? Yeah. So the regulations or the organized religion from God is a mercy from God that we can follow this, so we can be successful individually and collectively. When we do collectively like this kind of behavior and actions, it is good for the community. It's good for not only individuals but good for the community. So when, for example, God tells us to be charitable and give 2.5% of your surplus wealth to the poor people are not going to be remaining poor without any food and so on, because we'll be looking after them because they have the right on our money. Likewise, when we help people, we don't give with interest. We don't gamble, because gambling makes you a miserable individual because you're not responsible. You think like easy money and so on. And when you lose the gambling, what happens? God says, no, don't gamble at all. Drinking alcohol, for example. Why? We know I'm sure you know, the majority of the violent crimes happen because of the influence of alcohol. So God says there's some good in it and there's bad in it, but the bad outweighs the good. Yeah. So alcohol is used in the medicinal industry for making medicines and so on. Certain times, and so, that you have to, if you can avoid it, fine. If you cannot, there's some benefit. Some people say, I'm not saying you should take that medicine. There are medicines which are avoidable without alcohol, but alcohol in the way, it may have some benefits. People can use it, whatever. God says, stay away from it. Don't even go near it. The one who drinks, the one who serves, the one who presses the wine, the one who buys, the one who sells, every individual within this chain is cursed. So that, the whole thing is supposed to be removed. And we know the evil effects. So if you think about it, my friend Paul, Islam comes up with a way of life which is beneficial for us here, and it's exactly what we need for the hereafter in our journey. Yeah? It will empower us to take that journey with a sound mind with a way that yes, we will make sure peace and happiness and tranquility and justice established on this earth, so that we can then move on to the next phase in our life in the hereafter. We won't be unjust to the other communities like we hear all the injustices everyone because of greed. You will be just to yourself and just to the other people. And this is what Islam will give us. So take this journey of exploring Islam further, my friend Paul.
Well, and it's been nice to speak to you, mate. You're a good speaker. I've listened to you before, and thanks for your time. All right, man. Where's the sun gone?
Yeah. Take care, right?
All right, cheers,
and
Paul.
we talk again, inshallah. God willing.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Cheers.
Shoot, 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 what I do. Na 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 na. Shoot, shoot.
إذا أعجبك الفيديو لا تنسى الإعجاب والتعليق، ولكي يصلك كل جديد اشترك الآن.